Okay, so they just told everyone to be seated, and I want to get at least 10 minutes with the princess so she can explain to us why she came to Ukraine and more about this event. So, one of the things that Ukraine has been doing lately is engaging the continent of Africa, whether that be at a government level or whether that be at a like a non-governmental level. So, since I've been here in the past 14 years, I would say that in the past year alone, I've seen a lot of people from the continent of Africa come here, whether they're journalists, whether they are performers like the princess here. So this is Ukraine actually making a lot of good faith efforts to talk with people that they commonly have not communicated with in the past.
Hi everybody, my name is Princess Amooti Banaisa from Uganda, the Kingdom of Uganda. Why I'm a princess of the Buganda Kingdom is because my father was a prince of the Buganda Kingdom and my mother was a princess of the Toro Kingdom, also in Uganda.
Much of your childhood, you were in royalty, yeah?
Oh, yes, yeah.
You're the first princess that I've interviewed, so I don't know.
No, because you come, okay, for example, you come in the morning, you come downstairs and you're going to eat something and the housekeeper comes out and the first thing she does is kneel. And my mother was always like, you don't have to kneel. You just don't have to kneel. They were like, no, we have to kneel. And my father was like, let them do them. Let them do their cultural thing. So they kneel just as a point of politeness. It's kind of like a curtsy. So in Uganda, you kneel. It's kind of like a curtsy, and then they ask for things, and everything is invisibly done for you. It invisibly happens around you. You don't even barely have to ask, and oh, it's done. Oh, it's finished. Oh, okay. And so when I go home, oh, somebody's already washed the floor. My clothes are up. My sheets dry. All of this is done. And I didn't even have to say a word. That's the difference. It's so nice. But then when I'm in London, I'm in the laundrette, honey. My parents fought for the freedom of Uganda from the British. My father did, let me be specific about that. And he was the first Attorney General in the Ugandan government and wrote the constitution, the first constitution. So he was really like a real gung-ho kind of, and so was my mother. And together, they were kind of a fearless couple, let me put it that way. Then he carried on his law practice. Idi Amin came in, and my father was like, no problem, we just carry on. And this was in 1971. So for 4 years, he took on all the crazy law cases that nobody would take on because they were afraid of what Idi Amin would do. But my father was pretty fearless, having gone through the whole British colonialism thing. Until it got super dangerous and, gunshots were fired at us. So he thought, okay, time to go. And we left. And we landed in, because it was a very cloak and dagger organization of all of us, because we're 6 children. So we had to be split up and put into different places in order to leave the country. And then my mother just trusted that we would all show up in Kenya at one point. Once it was safe to go home, every family wants to go home. Nobody wants to be outside. Nobody wants to be a stranger from their own land, from their own culture, from their own language, from their own food, from their own what they know. There's nobody who volunteers for that. So we went home, or he went home, and said, I'm going to prepare the way, and you, my family, can follow me. the next thing we heard was he was made president of Uganda by the interim government. And so we all went back to Uganda. Well, I'm in Ukraine because I was invited by the ambassador of Argentina and Spain to sing for a concert that was raising funds for Save the Limb, which is for the soldiers of Ukraine. Because once upon a time in my own life, I was a refugee running from war in my own country of Uganda from the Idi Amin times.
My very first passport was a refugee passport issued by the United Nations because I ran away from my country because it was in civil war. That was my very first passport, the United Nations. And inside the passport it says you can go to all countries except Uganda, which was my country of birth. So I believe very passionately that no Ukrainian should ever carry a passport that does not belong to Ukraine.
There are a lot of countries on the continent of Africa that are neutral about Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they don't, and many of them are actually closer to Russia. So I'm curious what you think.
You know what? I really feel very passionately about this subject because 40 years ago, one Englishman stood up for Africa, and his name was Bob Geldof. He was just one guy. He wasn't even that famous. And he galvanized 1 billion people, everyday people. And so when our leaders, we have 54 leaders in countries and 54 leaders in Africa, but under those 54 people are 1 billion people, everyday people who walk the streets. And if we, the people, say we stand with Ukraine, pretty soon our leadership is going to have to change its tune. Instead of standing on the fence, they're going to have to take a side. But it starts with us people, the people of Africa, us 1 billion saying, well, some of us stand with Ukraine. So what are you going to do about it?
What were your first impressions?
I thought it was a great country. I mean, this is 2019. It was free. It was fun. It was just, it was just being in a version of New York, but in Europe. And the people were open. They were friendly, and I was very well received. Honestly, I was very well received by all the people, even the people that I didn't know walking along the street. They were so sweet and so kind and giving me directions, go here, go there, and all of that kind of thing you do as a tourist. So it was great. Yeah, it was great. And now at this time, coming back in this situation of war, what I found is they're still the same people, but they're just really resilient. Really, really resilient, because they just get on with their jobs. They're like, I'm going to work. I'm going to wait for the sirens to stop, and then I'm going to work. I was like, wow, because I've heard those sirens, and it's no joke, honestly. It is, it's quite, it can be quite scary if you're if you have a nervous disposition. I would not recommend it, but I don't. So, because having been through my situation in my childhood, I'm like, I've just got to support these people right now, and that's all that matters. One of the charities I spoke to was called Save Ukraine, which is about bringing back the children that have been displaced or, I don't want to say kidnapped, but, lost during the war. And 20,000 so far are nearly 20,000 officially documented as having been lost during the war and have to be brought back into Ukraine. So speaking to them, and the New York Times, by the way, wrote a great article about the abducted children of Ukraine on this very subject. So I went to see them, and speaking to them and spending time with the children who were being rehabilitated, who had been brought back. I actually went to the center there. I spoke to the teachers there. I hung out with the kids. It's so important to see that work because they take a holistic view. They counsel the parents. It's just not just, oh, here you are, you're back. It's also the mental health preparation, the psychological effect of supporting the parents and the children and bringing them all together in this environment where they are, as well as giving them homes where they can be together as a family again. And I thought that was really, I was very touched by that. I was very touched by Save Ukraine and, you know, what they were trying to do. And I mean, one of these homes that they give these families that take 5 people costs $80,000. It's nothing. When I think about my budget in marketing world, when I was in corporate world, hundreds of millions a year just on marketing in Nokia, hundreds of millions. So I'm thinking $85,000 for a family to be brought back together and, you know, and helped through that. So I talked to them. I also talked to the soldiers from cultural forces. They're musicians who've lost limbs during the war. One was an incredible opera singer who sang Nessun Dorma. Oh, please. Pavarotti, you've got competition. I know you're in the grave, I'm sorry. But, you know, and he was incredible. And this violinist who had one eye, but she was incredible. And I know classical music because I personally trained in it. So, it was just amazing. So speaking to them and their experiences as well, as soldiers and musicians who've been on the front line, and then come back having been, lost a limb to war, and still carried on. Their resilience was incredible, amazing. And that was very encouraging for me. So for me to then say, I stand with Ukraine, I'm like, even my fellow musicians are from Ukraine, after this trauma, are still there. And I think that's pretty special, I think. I'll tell you one experience I had that stood out for me was the siren went off. I was in the hotel and there's an alarm that goes off because you can get apps over here that, you know, tell you get into a shelter now. And of course you can hear them because you can hear them across the city. And so I had my go bag because I packed a go bag, you know, I'm just being practical. I got my go bag, raced down to the shelter, and there was nobody there. Nobody was there. No member of staff. And I was like, hold on. I'm sure I saw 200 people at breakfast this morning. Where are those folk? What happened? And there were 3 different rooms. As I went through the catacombs of the hotel, not one room had a single human being or a member of staff in there. I was like, dang, okay, so you're all in your beds, you're sleeping, you're like, we're relaxed. We're like, we don't know what you're doing down there, Amooti, but how are you? I'd go back to your bed. So I did. I went back to my bed. And since then, I've never panicked about it again. It's a true story. They need our support. We need to stand up for them. They can't do it by themselves. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. But we, the people, and I'm talking about the people, I'm not talking about politicians, government, whatever. I'm talking about the everyday people. We just need to stand with them and support them. And even if you say, you know what, I'm not going to have that coffee, I'm not going to go to Starbucks today, I'm going to take that $2 and I'm going to donate it to Ukraine. Just for today. And we, the people, can make a difference for them because they can't do it alone. You know, they can't do it alone.